Hi everyone, Mega Shorts here, bringing you another Doctor Who 5-inch scale action figure review. And in this review we're going to be taking a look at another one of the B&M exclusive sets from this year. And this is the 12th Doctor Collector set, featuring the 12th Doctor, Missy and Bill Potts. So this set comes as part of a revised second batch of the B&M exclusive sets that were released towards the end of last year. All the figures are exactly the same, but a few of them in the second batch have some differences in their sculpting and paintwork to make them a bit more accurate. In the case of this set, the Bill Potts figure is the only one that's been given some changes, whereas the 12th Doctor and Missy figures remain exactly the same as their original counterparts. And I have to say, the original versions of these sets proved to be impossible for me to find in my local B&M stores last year. I don't know whether my stores just didn't stock them or whether collectors were sweeping them up faster than I expected. I'm not sure. So I'm really pleased that Character decided to give us another batch rather than just giving us one that sold out near instantly towards the end of last year. So the packaging for this set is pretty much the same as it is for all the other B&M exclusive sets that we've had over the past couple of years. It has a classic Doctor Who logo in the bottom left corner, a clear plastic bubble showing the figures and any accessories they come with. We also get the names of the figures. At the top we get the Doctor Who logo once again, along with the Character Online website address. On the side we get the same Doctor Who logo along with some pictures of the figures and some product information. Then on the back we get some more pictures, again with their names, and a bit of company information at the bottom. Okay, so the first figure we're going to take a look at is the 12th Doctor in his burgundy jacket from Series 9, and we can see that this particular variant of the 12th Doctor is pretty much an amalgamation of two of the previous 12th Doctor variants. It uses the same upper body sculpt as the original 12th Doctor figures from Series 8, but it uses a repainted version of the Series 9 12th Doctor figure head sculpts, as well as the same legs, but repainted to have grey trousers instead of checkered trousers. Now, having these two variants side by side, I think the new variant definitely has the superior version of this particular head sculpt. You can see that the hair is still shaded this time round, but it's a lot lighter and I'd say a lot more accurate to how Peter Capaldi's hair looked in the show. The skin tone for the face as well as the hands is a lot lighter and a bit more natural looking this time. The eyes are a bit different too. You can see that they are still blue on the new version, but the blue paint on them is a bit more subtle, whereas on the original it was quite vibrant. And even though I still like the original version, and I don't think it's too bad, I'd say this one definitely knocks the other one out of the park, really. Unfortunately, I don't think the main body sculpt for this 12th Doctor figure works well for a burgundy jacket repaint, because even though we've got the jacket, we've not got the waistcoat, simply because the sculpt doesn't have it. And that for me really lets this figure down, because in the show he pretty much always wore the dark waistcoat with the burgundy jacket, and it just makes this figure look like it's really badly missing something. The sculpting of the jacket is pretty good. You get all the same detail that you got with it on the Series 8 12th Doctor figures, like the sculpted buttons. You get some on the sides there, as well as a few at the ends of the sleeves. You get a lot of creases, especially around the sleeves, and quite a few on the back as well, where you've also got some of the seams sculpted in. The shirt itself also has a lot of creases and obviously a row of buttons going down the middle, but sadly there's no waistcoat covering a good portion of it. Now, I think it could have been done as part of the paintwork. We have seen costumes done on other figures in the past where part of it has been sculpted and then a little part of it has been painted, like say a sort of shirt behind a jacket or a coat, something like that. And I think they may have just about pulled it off on this figure, even though the row of buttons from the shirt would have still been visible, because the row of buttons on the waistcoat would have still sat over the same line. But just not having it there at all as part of either the paintwork or sculpting just really lets this figure down, I think, especially given that I was really looking forward to getting a burgundy coat variant of the 12th Doctor at somewhere down the line. Not really much to say about the trousers. They've been painted with a sort of bluey grey, and they've got lots of sculpted creases going all the way down from the top to the bottom. The belt has also been painted really nicely. The silver buckle has been painted amazingly well, considering it is such a tiny part of the figure. And if you open the jacket up a bit, you can actually see some of the holes within one of the sides there. The boots, I think, look absolutely fantastic. I love the glossy paint that they've been done with. You can see loads of sculpted laces, the patterns going all the way down the sides, and some grey on the undersides, where there is surprisingly no mysterious peg hole for a mysterious non-existent display stand, which many of the other recent Doctor Who action figures have had over the past few years. The articulation for this particular 12th Doctor figure is exactly the same as it has been on the previous Series 8 and Series 9 12th Doctor figures. The head can turn from side to side, probably could go all the way around, but I think the collar of the shirt would cause a bit of paint damage. The arms have ball joints, so you can get them into some pretty good regeneration poses. They also have the usual bicep sword joints where they can turn all the way around. The arms can also move up and down from the elbows, and the wrists have the usual swivel joints where the hands can turn 360 degrees from there. Moving on to the lower body, you also has a waist joint where you can turn a little bit from there. The legs have the usual hinges where they can move outwards and inwards, but you can't move them all that far outwards because of the jacket. They can move backwards and forwards from the waist as usual. It can swivel 360 degrees at the thighs. The knees have the usual bend joint, and the boots can turn 360 degrees. Sadly, I can't say I like this 12th Doctor variant as much as some of the previous 12th Doctor variants. It's by no means a bad figure, and it's certainly not the worst figure we've seen in the Doctor Who 5-inch scale action figure line. I just feel like it could have been an awful lot better. The head sculpt has a great likeness to Peter Capaldi. It's certainly a nice improvement over the original version of it from the Series 9 figures. The costume has got some good sculpted detail and really well painted little details like the silver belt buckle and the sculpted detail within the shoes. The articulation is also pretty good. It's pretty much what I would expect from a 12th Doctor figure these days. I just would have liked this figure a lot more if it had the waistcoat, ideally as part of the sculpting. I think, to be honest, what they could have done for this figure is, instead of making it a burgundy jacket variant, they could have just had it as another dark jacket, sort of grey-blue jacket version with this particular head sculpt. Even though it wouldn't have been perhaps as exciting or as good as some of the other 12th Doctor figures we've had more recently, it would have been a bit more accurate, and it would have been a variant that would have been better than I think what we've got here. So from me, this particular 12th Doctor variant gets a well-earned 7 out of 10. Again, not a bad figure, just not quite as good as it could be, sadly. Okay, so here we have the new Missy variant, based on her appearance in the Series 9 episode Extremis. Like the 12th Doctor figure from this set, this figure is kind of an amalgamation of two of the previous variants. Most of the figure is a repaint of the burgundy coat version from the end of Series 8, now featuring a much lighter purple jacket and the hands being repainted to look like gloves, and the head sculpt is a repainted version of the one from the Deep Breath Missy variant. So taking a closer look at the new Missy variant side by side with the Deep Breath version, we can see that the head sculpt has got quite a few differences in the paintwork. The most obvious one is her eye makeup, but there are a few more subtle differences that I didn't notice at first, like the hair being a bit lighter this time. It's sort of still done in the same way with dark brown as the base and light brown on the top, but you can definitely see it a lot more so on the new version. The lips are also much lighter on the new variant, and you can see a bit more red in the cheeks. I've got no complaints for the head sculpt on this figure whatsoever. I think this is definitely one of the best we've seen from the Peter Capaldi era. The likeness to Michelle Gomez is absolutely spot on, and it's great to see that they've given her the evil, sinister grin, which I prefer much more so over the more sombre, blank look of the other Missy figure's head sculpt, which has the hat on the top. So moving down to the costume now, we can see this has been painted with what I like to call Joker purple, and with that facial expression, I have to say she does almost look like a female Joker here. The sculpted detail is really nice. I love the way they've done the patterns on the lapels going all the way down and across the bottom of the coat. On the back you can see some of the sculpted seams as well as a few creases. There's some buttons on the end of the sleeves which have also been painted black, and just beneath the coat you can see the paint of her shirt and tie with a few buttons and the white collar. The rest of the dress is painted with exactly the same purple, not really all that much to it other than some sculpted seams and creases and this black line going just over one of the legs. And the boots are pretty much exactly the same as they were on the original. You can just about see some sculpted creases as well as the laces on them. Now unfortunately, because the boots don't really take up all that much room and the figure is quite top heavy, the figure can fall over quite easily. Funnily enough, just as I say that, the figure stands up perfectly, but this figure and the other Missy figures have had some trouble standing up on my Doctor Who action figure shelves. So if you are going to get this figure or any of the other Missy figures, just bear in mind that you have to be careful with the way that you pose them stood with the legs, because they can easily fall over. The articulation of this Missy figure is exactly the same as the other Missy variants. The head can turn from side to side. Again, like with the 12th Doctor, probably could go all the way around, but you really need to be careful with the shirt there. The arms have the ball jointed shoulders, so they can move outwards and inwards. The arms also have two swivel joints around the bicep and elbow, which is something I don't think we've seen together on any previous Doctor Who 5-inch scale figures. So they can swivel from there. The arms can also go up and down from the elbows as usual. The wrists also have the usual swivel joints where the hands can turn all the way around from there. She does have quite a nicely hidden waist joint where she can turn just about that much from both sides. The legs also have joints from the sides and the usual knee joints. However, because of the dress, you can't really get them to move far. So of all the three figures in this set, the Missy figure is definitely my favourite. The head sculpt has a fantastic likeness to Michelle Gomez, especially with that evil grin. I think the costume has turned out really well. I really like the more vibrant colour to it, and the sculpted detail is presented really nicely with the great paintwork. The articulation is pretty good as well. Again, there is some limited movement, but that can't really be helped because of the design of the costume really. So from me, the Missy figure gets a very well a 9 out of 10. It's a fantastic variant, especially if you haven't already got any of the previous Missy variants. I just would have liked it a little bit more if the purple was actually a little bit darker, as I feel in the episode it wasn't quite as bold as it is on this particular figure. Still, this is easily the best of the bunch, and it's definitely one of my favourites from the Peter Capaldi era so far. Okay, so last but not least, here we have the Bill Potts figure. Now, this figure is slightly different from the original version from last year in that the bun in the hair is more of a dark red this time, and black lines have been painted on either side of the jeans. Now, this figure also uses the same sculpt as the original Bill Potts figure, the single-carded Bill Potts figure from last year, which retains the sculpt of the Primeval Series 1 Abby Maitland figure from 2007. After having a lot of trouble with the paintwork on the original single-carded Bill Potts figure, I'm pleased to say that the new B&M exclusive Bill Potts figure has vastly better paintwork. You can see that the top on this one has been painted much better. The lines have turned out really well, and it's not really got any blemishes or marks, which this one sadly has a lot of. You can also see that the bun on top of the hair has been painted fairly well. There's still some black parts on it which shouldn't be there, but it doesn't have any marks of paint going onto the rest of the hair like on the original version. So a few other differences within this figure. It does have a slightly lighter skin tone than the original. The eyes have been painted a tiny bit more of a browny red this time. The hair is a tiny bit lighter, but it's quite hard to see in the camera. And the shoes are also darker this time, but you can see that a bit of the turquoise from the original version is still present on the inner sides. So like with the original single-carded Bill Potts figure, my favourite thing about this particular variant of Bill is the head sculpt, which has an absolutely fantastic likeness to Pearl Mackie. The facial features have been painted really well, and I absolutely love the sculpting of the hair. I really like the way they've done it with sort of a dark brown base with just a slightly lighter brown over the top, making it look a little bit more realistic than if it was just all one sort of shade of brown. The costume, again, has been painted much better than it was on the original version. The stripes have turned out quite well. Not quite as colourful as the original single-carded version's costume, but again, the paintwork is vastly superior on this version. Rather than the trousers being just black this time, they've been painted to look more like denim jeans, which, funnily enough, is what they were on the original Abby Maitland figure from Primeval. They've got some really good blue shading on them, especially where you've got the sculpted creases around the knees, but there's also quite a bit of it around the waist and going towards the boots as well. Again, you've got the black lines painted on the sides, which makes this version a little bit more accurate than the original version of this release. The shoes are much darker this time. They've been painted mainly with black instead of turquoise, but you can still see some of that turquoise remaining on the insides, which would have been better being black rather than turquoise, but I'm not going to let that ruin my verdict on the figure. I really like the brown wash that they've added over the laces as well. They could have just got away with them painted white like on the original version, but it does help them to look a bit old, worn, just adds a tiny bit more realism to the figure. So with this figure being a repaint, it retains exactly the same articulation from the previous Bill Potts figures. The head can turn 360 degrees, not that it really needs to, but you can do it. The arms can turn all the way around from the shoulders. You just have to be careful with where you've got the head because of the hair. There's the usual bicep swivel joint and the elbow joint. She hasn't got any wrist joints, but to be honest, I'm glad that they haven't included them because unless you've got wrist swivel joints at the end of like a jacket or a coat or something, it just kind of takes a little bit away from the sculpt, I think. She also has a waist joint where she can move only a little bit, but it is there. The legs also have the usual hinge joints where they can move outwards and inwards. They can go backwards and forwards from the top, bend at the knees, and the boots can turn 360 degrees as well. So even though I'm not a huge fan of the Bill Potts figures using the Primeval Abby Maitland figure sculpt, I think they've done really well with this repaint. Again, the paintwork for the most part on my particular Bill Potts figure from this set has turned out much better than it did on the single carded version. Again, that head sculpt is absolutely superb. I don't think we're going to get a better likeness to Pearl Mackie in the Doctor Who action figures than what we've got here. The paintwork and sculpting for the hair is absolutely fantastic. The costume has turned out really well. I love the way they've painted the jeans, and it's nice to get a little bit more accuracy in the costume with those black lines this time. The articulation is pretty good, perhaps not as much as you could expect from a figure that had been released more recently, but it's not too bad. So from me, the Bill Potts variant gets a 6.5 out of 10. Okay, so overall, I think the B&M exclusive 2019 Doctor Who 12th Doctor Collector's figure set is an okay addition to my collection. I wouldn't say this is as good as the other B&M exclusive sets we've had over the past couple of years, but it's not all bad. The 12th Doctor figure has a nice improved version of the Series 9 figure head sculpt. The sculpted detail is pretty decent, and the articulation is pretty much what you should expect from a 12th Doctor figure. It's just that the main sculpt for the costume just doesn't quite work well for a burgundy jacket variant, sadly. The Bill Potts figure has a great likeness to Pearl Mackie. I don't think character are ever going to give us a better likeness to Pearl Mackie than what we've got with these Bill Potts figures so far. And the costume is definitely much better in its paintwork than the previous version from this set, and also the single carded version. The Missy figure, again, is by far my favourite figure of this set. Absolutely fantastic likeness to Michelle Gomez. Really glad they went with the smiling head sculpt, and the costume has turned out pretty nicely with those vibrant colours and the sculpted detail, and not to mention the articulation. And from me, the B&M exclusive 12th Doctor Collector set gets a 7 out of 10. This is definitely a slight improvement over the original version of this set, in that the Bill Potts figure has been given a slight repaint to make it look a little bit more accurate. Other than that, it's not a set I like as much as many of the previous B&M exclusive sets. I'd still recommend it to you if you haven't already got the original Missy. 12th Doctor or Bill Potts figures. It's just, among the others, it's just nowhere near as good, sadly. So that is pretty much it for my review of the B&M exclusive 12th Doctor 2019 collector set. Hope you've all enjoyed watching this review. If you want to share your thoughts on these figures, you can do so in the comment section below. And my next review will be of the B&M exclusive 4th Doctor and TARDIS set. Thanks for watching this review, guys, and I will see you again soon.